Pulled up here, the this is a weekly statistical survey that the New York Fed has on its balance sheet of all the primary dealers. They ask them various questions about their balance sheets and what they've done during the week. So this table 1 says primary dealer transactions in U.S. government agency, mortgage-backed and corporate securities by type of securities. So and who you traded with. Let's skip ahead. Here's what you traded. You can see the different categories. I'm going to make this a little larger when we come to the right one. U.S. government securities. You can see coupon securities. Federal agency. That's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You see their mortgage-backed securities, corporate securities. So these are the securities in which they're trading. You haven't seen the word repo yet, have you? Okay, these are security dealers. Okay, now this one I want to dwell on for a moment. So this is table 3, and let me just read this here. What it's showing you here is the net position of the dealer. Okay, what is their inventory, and therefore what is their risk exposure in the market for these securities? And you can see here that they're showing U.S. government securities, Treasury bills. There's about looks like $26 billion worth of Treasury bills there. Coupon securities due in 3 years or less, there's 68 billion. And then there's negligible amounts of any longer term bonds there, okay? It's all short-term stuff. This is very unusual, okay? If you looked at these dealers' balance sheets before the crisis, and in fact before Operation Twist that the Fed has been doing, typically, the dealers have a short position in bills. Okay, that is to say, they actually have negative position in bills. They've sold more bills to the market than they actually own. So they have a short position in bills and a long position in bonds. So their short bills, their long bonds, they're picking up the term spread is what they're doing typically. Here you see they have no bonds at all and they're long bills. What they're doing is taking the opposite side of what the Fed is doing. The Fed has been dumping its bills, getting rid of its bills, and buying bonds. Okay, and this has distorted the dealer's balance sheet. This has led some people to suppose to say, well, that explains why repo is distorted. Okay, it has something to do with the distortion of the dealer's balance sheets, and when it goes back to normal, the repo rate will go back to normal. It'll go back down below Fed funds. There was an article published on Reuters by some analysts from Barclays that made exactly this argument. Okay, it's certainly true that dealer inventories are all out of whack. That's certainly true. That Operation Twist is doing a big job on the dealers because the Fed is, when it wants to buy bonds. Okay, who does it buy them from? It buys them from the dealers. That's what a dealer's job is. They're making markets in bonds. They're saying, I'll buy these bonds at this price, I'll sell these bonds at this price. The Fed says, okay, at that, I'm a buyer. And so you suck all the bond inventory out of the dealers. Okay, that's the first thing that happens. Okay, and then the Fed says, oh, and by the way, I'm a seller of bills. So you shove all those bills and you eliminate the short position the dealers normally have, and they go way long. So the dealers are absorbing this massive mismatch that the Fed is imposing on the market. And then gradually they will distribute it. You know, they'll find some more bonds or they'll find some people who want bills. They'll distribute it among other people, but for the moment, they're absorbing this on their own balance sheet. That is certainly going to push around the price of bills. It's certainly going to push around the price of bonds. Okay? That's the point. That's why the Fed is doing it. It wants to raise the price of bonds. It wants to lower the long-term interest rate. It wants to push around those prices. So it's definitely going to push around those prices. But why should it push around the repo rate? Okay, that's what I wonder. Okay, but let's pursue this one more. So this is table 3 that is showing you the dealer's balance sheet in a way. You can see their exposures, but these are net exposures. This is how many outright positions you have. By the way, it doesn't show you necessarily even their risk exposure because they could have derivatives, they could have swaps, they could have futures, they could be hedging every which way. Okay, this is just showing you the securities they have in their inventories. And it's distorted. It's not what they used to have. What this is showing you is the gross balance sheet. Okay, not the net, not what your net exposure is, but what your gross exposure is, meaning you can see there total 1.9, and those are in millions, so that's $2 trillion. Okay? So there's $2 trillion worth of securities in. Okay? So these are securities that the dealer has brought onto its balance sheet. Okay? And it has to finance them by borrowing overnight or by borrowing term. This is showing how they're financed. This is the other side of the balance sheet, securities out, securities that it's sold. Okay? So it's sort of short positions, and this is how it's financing those. Okay? Overnight or term. Look at these numbers down here at the bottom. Memorandum, reverse repurchase agreements and repurchase agreements. Okay? Reverse repurchase agreements and repurchase agreements. Let's make that into a balance sheet. Here. Okay, so reverse says it's on the asset side there, and you have overnight of 878. Okay, and you have term of 1316. And on the other side, if you look at repo there, repurchase agreements, you have overnight of I can't quite read that, I wrote in my note, 1842. And term of 931. Okay? So this financing of the securities, okay, shows you the other side of the securities business, right? They're buying and they're selling bonds, okay, but they are at the same time funding their long positions in the repo market here, and funding their short positions in the reverse market here, okay? So they are like a bank. And what are they like a bank? You know, I told you that this overnight repo, the pension fund thinks of that as like a deposit account, even better than a deposit account because it's secured, okay? And there's $1.8 trillion worth of this stuff. $1.8 trillion worth of this stuff. This is larger than M1, okay? This is a very big number, okay, in the economy. And it is sort of institutional investors are using this as their money supply here, wholesale money supply here. But notice what is going on here too. The big number on this side is term. The big number on this side is overnight. So what are these repo dealers doing? They're borrowing short and lending long, just like a bank. They're borrowing overnight and they're lending term. Now maybe term is a week, okay, instead of a day, okay, but it's more than overnight. They definitely are operating like a bank, and in doing so, they're supplying liquidity to the world, okay, and to the wholesale money market world. So the security dealers, although they're focusing on making money by trading securities, in doing so, they create an enormous volume of monetary assets for the rest of the economy. The total size of this, by the way, these numbers don't add up. There's other things on here. So net worth. There's other ways they finance themselves and so forth. It's not entirely a story of repo. Net assets financed is the balancing item here. But these are small numbers. These are the big numbers. This is what mostly the balance sheet is. Yes.
I think I saw this once, like when banks or just anyone is like rolling over, people roll over their repos on a general basis. So would it be possible to illustrate how like changing the haircut, that can cause problems for them?
Yes, sure. So here, this language, okay, rolling over repo, okay. So these loans are maybe overnight, maybe they're 3 days, they're not very long, okay. So that if you want to continue doing this, you have to roll it over, you have to renew this instrument. Remember I started the class. The money goes one way overnight and then it comes back the next day. But you can then renew it and do it again. But everything is up for grabs. All of the prices are up for grabs. The haircut, the repo rate are up for grabs and they can change. So if you were using repo to finance your holding of a security, okay, and overnight the haircut moves from 2% to 10%, you find yourself with a funding gap. Okay. Yesterday, you were able to borrow 99 cents on the dollar with this security. Today, you can only borrow 90 cents on the dollar. Where are you going to find the other 9? You know, if you were using this to finance your holding of the security, where are you going to find the other 9? And if you can't find the other 9, then you can't hold this security, and you have to sell it for whatever you can get for it, which of course is a fire sale price, and it pushes the price down. So the movement of haircuts can very much foster a liquidity spiral down, and that was part of the story in the crisis. That there were these so-called AAA mortgage-backed securities that had very tiny haircuts, and those haircuts moved from 2% to 10% to 50%, and meanwhile, so all this scramble for funding was going on with big liquidity crunch that distorted every other price in the world.